To look ahead at the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. With us today is Dr. Myong-hyun, a research fellow at the Asan Institute for Policy Studies. It's good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So Kim arrived in Vietnam after a 65-hour train journey coming directly from North Korea. Now let's start with why he would take such an arduous journey like that.
Well, obviously he feels very secure in his control of the regime back in home, back in Pyeongyang, obviously. But also I think he's trying to show, he and his advisors are trying to show to the world that the North Korea and each leader are special, that the world, not North Korea, should accommodate what North Korea wants. And I think that's exactly the message they are sending. These days, no one, especially the top leaders of a country, don't travel by train anywhere because it's too time-consuming and logistically it's a nightmare. But then North Korea has shown that it actually can twist the arm of China or all countries to accommodate such a disruptive travel schedule, which have probably affected millions of Chinese travel plans for the journey that lasted almost 3 days across the country. So I think it's North Korea trying to show that, even if North Korea has gotten out of isolation in the recent years, and now it's trying to show to the world that if North Korea is going to come out of isolation, it's going to be in its own way and its own strategy and own policy. And I think it's going to be the same, ambition to become a nuclear state.
But isn't there a risk that the reverse could happen, that people could think Kim Jongun decided not to fly because he doesn't even trust his own planes, and the fact that he's traveling by train makes him seem almost backwards, from a leader from a different age almost?
Well, that's the downside about traveling by train all the way from Pyongyang to Hanoi. But on the flip side of that is that North Korea has shown that, contrary to the perception that the people have of North Korea, that it's secretive, it hides things, it's not transparent. It actually flipped that perception by showing that, it actually can travel by train, from all the way from North Korea to Vietnam, which it totally can be observed by the rest of the world 24/7. So I think, in a way, North Korea is showing to the world that whatever downside, whatever weakness they have, they can flip it and make it into a strength. So in that sense, it's been a great PR success, I would say.
And you do agree with the fact that this does show Kim's regime is stable now, and there's no fear of perhaps any troubles that while
Definitely,
he's away.
it's a given in the sense that we have already seen that in his visit to China and then to Seoul and obviously to Singapore. He's been very pathetic leader in the last year or so, and it shows that his control of the regime of the country is very secure.
Let's look ahead now to this summit that's upcoming now. It's going to be, it's almost upon us. On Wednesday, they will meet for the second time in 8 months. Now, how important is this meeting?
Well, in the sense that it is important, just like the first one was very important, but in a different sense. The first meeting was, we know from the outcome of the first meeting that it's been very symbolic in terms of a success. We haven't seen major progress in the denuclearization, but that wasn't really dissatisfying to the rest of the world, because the fact that the leader of North Korea and the United States got together was a major success, and everybody agreed with that. But with the second summit, the burden on the leaders is to come up with a concrete progress and the denuclearization promise that they made in Singapore 8 months ago. So I think the world is watching whether Trump and Kim Jongun can deliver on their promises made 8 months ago in Singapore. And in that sense, this is important, just as important as the first meeting, but in a different sense.
Before we go into what the kind of agreements they will try to hash out this time, let's look at the fact that one of the main differences this time compared to their first meeting is the fact that it's happening over 2 days. Now, of course, we were expecting at first perhaps 2 full days, but it looks like at the moment it's just going to be a dinner, perhaps a brief or one-on-one meeting on Wednesday, and then a full summit talks on Thursday. What do you make of this schedule?
Well, first of all, it shows how much of a weight and importance that President Trump attaches to his meetings with Kim Jong-un. There's no doubt about it. And second is that it also shows that the two leaders haven't been able to make much progress in terms of what kind of denuclearization they have agreed upon. And I think the operational logic here is that President Trump believes probably that in order to effectuate fundamental change in North Korea, such as making North Korea give up its nuclear weapons, it needs to have face-to-face meeting with the top leader of the country and spend as much time as possible extending assurances in terms of security and economic assistance in order to sway North Korean leaders, plan from becoming a nuclear state to one that gives up nuclear weapons. So I think that's the reason why President Trump is investing a lot of time and effort to have this face-to-face personal meeting with Kim Jongun to convince him to take the plunge, so to speak, and then go ahead with the denuclearization promise that Kim Jongun made back in Singapore.
The fact is that originally we thought it was going to be two almost full days of talks, maybe like a day and a half. But at the moment, it seems there was some disappointment by the fact that Kim Jong-un and Trump won't be meeting on the first day till the evening, it seems.
I mean, this is actually a meeting that's taking place far away from, respective leaders' homes. So in that sense, it's going to be very taxing on both leaders to have 2 days full of meetings. And also, we're talking about a very simple, very fundamental agreement that we are looking for here, which is North Korea's willingness to give up its nuclear weapons. If they cannot make it in 1 or 2 days, probably it doesn't make sense to spend more time than that. It's probably better for them to get to know each other better and then have a more fundamental exchange of opinions and perspectives at this time.
Let's look at the actual negotiations now, because working level talks have been taking place for several days. And of course, we don't know what's been going on in those discussions. But one of the suggestions that has keeps coming up is the fact that the two sides are working towards the establishment of an American liaison office in Pyongyang. Do you think that might be something that could be on the cards?
Well, it's been mentioned by the U.S. media in this regard when it comes to negotiating with North Korea. But then I think that's definitely in the cards. There's no doubt about it. And is it basically because United States probably is not ready to give North Korea what North Korea wants right now, which is the relaxation of the sanctions that are currently in place. Instead of relaxing the sanctions, United States apparently is willing to give North Korea some political concessions, such as normalizing essentially the relations between the two countries by establishing liaison's office, and also maybe signing the declaration to end the war. So these are the political concessions I think the U.S. government is willing to consider in place of economic sanctions.
There's also a lot of talk about whether North Korea will agree to dismantle its Yongbyon nuclear facility. Now, these rumors keep coming up. There must be some sort of a reason why they come up. How likely do you think it could happen that North Korea is willing to give up Yongbyon at this time right now?
Well, Yongbyon is going to be, right now Yongbyon is operational, but it's not really essential to North Korea's nuclear development anymore because Yongbyon is basically about developing plutonium-based weapons. We know that North Korea moved on and then they are using uranium to develop their nuclear capability. So in that sense, North Korea can give up Yongbyon without too much problem. But on the other hand, it's still an important part of the North Korea's nuclear infrastructure. So I think North Korea is trying to get maximum price for giving up the Yongbyon. I'm sure North Korea invested a lot of time and effort and money in building the facility. So, but then I don't think North Korea is hearing from the U.S. side that the U.S. is willing to give a lot of price for North Korea to give up Yongbyon.
One other possible outcome as well is there is some expectation towards some sort of agreement towards a declaration to formally end the Korean War. Now, in the past, South Korea and China have been expected to be involved in those kinds of agreements, but the Blue House seems to have almost given its a blessing, should we say, to North Korea and the U.S. to come up with an agreement on their own. And the Blue House spokesperson also recently said that the possibility of the two sides agreeing to something on this during this summit remains open. Do you think we can expect something on that as well?
Well, clearly the Blue House is sending a signal to North Korea and the United States that the bar to agree on the declaration to end the war is much lower now because South Korea is no longer asking the two countries to join in this kind of occasion. So essentially it makes the signing of the agreement much easier logistically and politically for North Korea and the United States. And I think the reason why Blue House is pushing for this is because after the North Korea and the United States, which right now they're focused on sanctions and denuclearization, if the two countries sign on the declaration to end the war, it will actually ease up the further progress on the inter-Korean exchange, and that's because South Korea can claim that basically the war is over in the Korean Peninsula and start the work on the transitioning and the inter-Korean relations from one of the armistice to one of the peace regime. I think that was a major program for the Blue House, and I think that's something that the Blue House wants from Hanoi, regardless whether South Korea has an input there or not.
But how likely do you think that is that they will actually have some sort of like a formal declaration to end the Korean War this time? Do you think it might not be just more like, they promised to work towards a declaration working with South Korea and China, would it not?
Well, I think the chance, the possibility of happening is actually 50-50. Depends on what North Korea can deliver in terms of denuclearization. But at the same time, there's also this factor that President Trump wants to come out with a tangible achievement coming out of Hanoi this time. So declaration to end the war could be one. But we have to remember that if you just focus on President Trump, the chance of signing the agreement will be much, much higher. But we have to remember that back in Washington, there's a high level of concern about unilaterally signing the declaration to end the war because there's a suspicion that this could lead to the dismantlement of the United Nations Command. You would undermine the justification to base the U.S. troops in the South Korea, which in the long run will undermine the alliance. So that's going to be a factor that President Trump will take into account when he considers signing the agreement.
As usual, we haven't heard much from Kim Jongun, but Trump has been making various comments about the upcoming summit. And the latest comments that has caught most of our ears is the fact that he said he'd be, quote, happy as long as North Korea does not conduct any further nuclear or missile tests. And that's all he's looking for now. Is he looking to try and lower expectations at the moment?
Definitely, he's lowering the expectation for his American electorate. Also, it lowers the expectation for North Korea because while essentially President Trump is cabling to North Korea that the pressure won't be there for North Korea to deliver on denuclearization, but at the same time, the sanctions will remain in place because he's right now happy and doesn't seem to feel the need to use sanctions as a leverage to speed up or slow down denuclearization. So I think North Korea will consider that factor really carefully because right now I think North Korea is the one that's desperate for time, meaning it needs to have some sort of a pressure lowered on the part of on the economic front right now. But then if President Trump is happy with the current status quo, that means that the United States won't consider seriously to lift the sanctions because nothing is really against their liking. So I think that's something. It's a message to North Korea to deliver on the objective promise about denuclearizing, but at the same time just cabling to Pyongyang that there's no pressure for it. So which is kind of a contradiction, but it's the way President Trump operates right now.
Perhaps North Korea is the one who's more desperate in the situation right now, as you say. We'll have to keep an eye out for what comes out of this summit in the next couple of days. Thank you for coming in, Andrew. You'll be with us throughout the next 2 days as well to give us your insights further as well.
It will be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.